Welcome to the Demand Stacking Podcast, where early stage business to business startups can learn how to grow a predictable demand generation strategy to help them hit their aggressive growth targets. Now here's your hosts, Scott Gilbert and Brian Koffler.
All right. Welcome back to the Demand Stacking Podcast. My name is Scott Gelber, and I'm here with my co-host, Brian Koffler. And on today's episode, we'll be chatting with Max Spanier, who's the president of Sloane Staffing, about how to hire top-tier marketing talent. Just a quick caveat before we jump in. Sloane Staffing actually does all the hiring for SRG Marketing, our agency, and they found us some awesome demand gen talent. And not only have they found us good talent, but they've also sourced it in a really quick time, in a matter of weeks. So these guys are definitely experts at what they do, and I'm excited to pick Max's brain on this topic. So Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thanks, Brian. Thanks so much for having us.
Cool. So I guess just to start, Max, I mean, I gave you a brief intro, but I don't think it did your business justice. So if you could just give us a quick introduction of yourself and what Sloane Staffing does, that'd be great.
Yeah. So demand gen, marketing operations, I mean, these are all terms in the B2B MarTech, B2B SaaS, B2B services world that most people don't really understand what that means unless you've been in it, right? So a little bit about us and how we started this business. I was an enterprise seller in the marketing technology space my whole career. My last job was at Adobe. Before that, Marketo through acquisition, obviously the Marketo Adobe acquisition. Before that was selling interactive content software to demand gen and content and chief marketing officers of B2B companies. Before that, I was selling digital marketing. So I although I've never been in a marketing seat, I've always sold to marketers. So I always spoke the marketing language and understood what an MQL and SQL, which is how it landed me into this seat. So I was at Marketo and I realized, I mean, you both know, being such experts in HubSpot, like without the right Marketo talent in the seat, doesn't matter. You might as well just use MailChimp, or you might as well just use Constant Contact, because that's essentially, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for this Cadillac, and you're really only using it from a very small portion. So my wife and I started this business 4 years ago. All we do is recruit B2B marketing, B2B sales, MOPs, demand gen, enterprise sales, SDRs, for organizations in the US and nearshore, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But like I said before, thanks so much for having me on, and love talking about demand gen in multiple different contexts.
Cool. Max, just as somebody who's so in the world of marketing and B2B SaaS sales, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the marketing, or that marketing leaders should know about, that are looking to hire or source talent?
Account-based marketing is like everybody's talking about it. Everybody's, 6 Sense, demand-based, Terminus, all these different tools. So when I left Marketo 5 years ago, Marketo was like the, marketing automation. People were still kind of new to it. Like everybody had it, but they weren't truly like using it the way that it should be leveraged. ABM is like this new trend. It's the new kid on the block. It is like absolutely blowing up. But the problem is, similar to marketing operations or demand gen 5 years ago, people are looking to invest in an account-based marketing tool, but don't have the right strategy or the right people internally that can really operate in this motion. Because you both know, I mean, how many clients come to you and say, what can you help us with ABM? Well, yeah, but do we have buy-in from sales? Do we have an SDR motion that's going to follow up on these activities? Do we have, right? Because, ABM is just it's just noise unless you have this change agent internally that can like get the buy-in from the sales team to actually give a shit about this messaging and this content and everything that needs to, happen.
I think
interesting.
You actually just parlayed that beautifully into my next thank you, which was, how does that affect the roles that are being hired for? Like the trends that you see, does that change the roles? Does that change the descriptions of the roles or the types of people that companies are looking for?
100%. So as you know, last year was a bloodbath in tech hiring. Kudos to you for starting your company in that year, where people were probably like, why are you why are you calling me? Or it actually could be better because they're laying off so many people.
It was actually the latter, believe it or not. It actually worked in our favor really well.
Yeah. And just like COVID worked in our favor because, there was this boom in COVID before COVID, right? Remote was a thing, but another point. So what I'm seeing now is that a lot of people are blending positions. So they're calling it a demand gen manager, but it's really an account-based marketer. It's really a HubSpot specialist. It's really a change agent to get content, to drive messaging, to get product marketing, to get messaging. So companies are being very specific versus 2 years ago. If somebody had demand gen on their resume, they're putting them in an interview process. Now it's, if you're a cybersecurity company, do they have cyber experience? Do they have experience marketing to a CIO? Do they have experience marketing to a CISO? Do they have Sixth Sense experience? Do they have HubSpot experience? Do they have management? Are they hands-on? So it's not so much the trends of the roles, it's the trends of what's expected.
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago when we were starting on demand gen, I think demand gen meant like you're responsible for almost anything that involves like driving sales pipeline. So it wasn't just ABM. It wasn't just like your day-to-day campaigns. It was also Google ads, LinkedIn ads. It was a pretty like well-rounded role. And then I think what you're saying is something that I've seen as well is like, it seems like now demand gen is like, and like digital are now separate. It's really like demand gen is more of a campaign manager, ABM person. And then there's some expert in Google ads, LinkedIn ads who does that.
Or agency, right? Or external person that does the advertising, because people are starting to realize it's just too many things to put under one individual for them to be effective at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know you mentioned the tools, but like, is there any specific tools that you see popping up more? Because like, obviously in the past, it was always the marketing automation. That was like a must have, like HubSpot or Marketo. Like, yeah. I starting to see Sixth Sense more on a lot of like job descriptions. I don't know if you've seen that or any other tools that are really becoming popular.
Yeah, totally. It's Sixth Sense demand base are, whether it's a demand gen role, like I never used to see in marketing operations positions, ABM tools. It was Marketo, Tableau, maybe Looker, maybe Domo, maybe Salesforce, right? It was just really Marketo and Salesforce, and that was the marketing operations position. Now you see demand gen positions where it's even blended. I just talked to a company today for a demand gen leadership role. They want Tableau, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, ABM tools, PPC, SEO, right? But I think it's also a difference between a leadership position and then also the individual contributor. This is a leadership role overseeing a team that he's going to have at various people.
I think what you're saying, Max, is things change so quickly. I think even for 5 or 10 years ago, which I guess is a long time in this space, but in the world isn't that long of a time, the skill sets that, Scott or I have are probably different and probably more broad in general than somebody who's coming up now and has their first or second job. And we see that too, by the way, like when we're talking with clients who have in-house marketers, we see the difference in kind of the skill sets and how specialized. The next question that I had is about not just the candidate's point of view, but from the company's point of view. Like, has the hiring process changed or how they evaluate or companies evaluate talent?
Yeah, remember, I touched on it a minute ago, just about industry. A year and a half ago, before this whole tech crunch that's just happened, companies didn't care about industry. They didn't care about level of experience. They didn't care about location. It was all remote, right? But like when the issue with recruiting is it's very cyclical and dependent on the economy, right? So when the economy's great, the supply of jobs is up, but the demand, but the supply of candidates are low. and then on the flip side, when the economy is not doing so well, the number of jobs are down and the number of candidates are way up. So it's like you're always kind of counterbalancing, and that's why working with a recruiting agency, you really get access to talent that you might normally not get. But from a process standpoint, again, in the last 4 years, we've probably done a handful, maybe 20 like hybrid or on-site positions. 2024, we have 30 something open roles on our board. Half of them are on-site or hybrid. That would have never happened a couple years ago. From those half of those positions, 10 of them are very specific to, say, cybersecurity, these specific tools, right? So I think it all comes back to like where the economy is going and how many jobs and how many candidates determine how picky that you can be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Max, I guess my next question, this is a demand gen focused podcast, and maybe we might have already touched on it. You've been covering a lot in answering these questions. Yeah. But I guess for the marketing leaders listening, to this podcast, a lot of them, like even the people we work with when they finally are looking to hire a full-time demand gen person, they're always asking us like, what should we be looking for? What should we be putting in this job description? Like, does this job description look right? And I'm curious to get your thoughts on like, if you were talking to a VP of marketing, CMO, and they're hiring a demand gen person, like, what advice would you give them on like what they should be looking for in terms of like characteristics, skills, experience, all that good stuff?
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, I don't really look at job descriptions. I don't look at resumes. I mean, it's all around conversation, right? So if a CMO, the first question you always ask is like, what does your team look like, right? What tools are you leveraging? Okay, cool. So now we know they have Salesforce, they have a sales operations person. So it's like recruiting is like a puzzle. Depending on the puzzle pieces that they are without, that's what we need to find. So if their goal is to drive, X amount of pipeline by December of 2024, and they plan to do it with email, with ABM, with event marketing, with XYZ, you need to find somebody that has all that experience, right? And you also need to find probably somebody that's very hands-on, because I'm assuming if it's a first marketer, they're not going to have this big team to, be pass things off. So they have to be okay with the unknown of, being a hands-on person, being a doer, also being a strategic individual, and then having, resources through the team at SRG as they're able to, continue to scale the program.
Max, flip side of that question. So you answered the what they should do. What shouldn't a marketing leader who's looking to hire, or a company? I'm sure you've seen bad examples of this.
This one's a tough one. It's hard to quantify this piece. What shouldn't they do? A lot of people hire, most leaders that we work with don't have this they're not great interviewers, right? They don't really truly understand what it is that they're looking for and how to interview somebody based on those characteristics, or what questions to ask. Do we do tests? Do we not do a test? I think the main thing here is like hire fast, fire faster, right? I hate to say that terminology, but what you shouldn't do is put somebody through eight interview steps, 7 interview steps, 10 interview steps, and we're seeing that a lot of, because they're afraid to make the wrong decision, not afraid to, and not excited about making the right decision. So what the biggest trend I see that's been tough is like just stringing people on through a process, and this is our process, right?
Do you see that? Is that increasing, Max? Because maybe because of the economy and companies feel like they need to get this right and they don't have a ton of headcount. So it's like, we're making a decision and this better be the right one. Is that the issue?
I think it's not so much that you can say that. I can't say that it's because of the economy and it's because of the industry that this is happening. I think when companies know exactly what they want, that it's a seamless process, right? When they're unsure, which again, comes back to like why there's so many steps. They truly don't really know what it is that they're looking for and how to screen them out, right? So, for example, we did a VP of demand gen search at the end of November last year. It took us 5 weeks from start to finish. There's 4 interviews, done. They knew what they wanted, right? They knew exactly what it is they wanted. They knew who they needed to speak to. They knew what questions to ask. It wasn't the first time that they've hired that individual. So I think it's case by case. It's more like, does that CMO know exactly what they need in that individual, and how do you interview around that?
Yeah, that's that makes sense. That like if you don't have clear expectations on exactly what you're looking for, you're gonna feel uncertain because the full-time to hires are a big commitment. And I think the other thing that maybe people fear and maybe why they drag it along is they don't want to have to deal with the repercussions of if they found the wrong person, because it's not fun. It's not fun to have performance conversations, do the whole management thing, then eventually let them go. Like no one wants to do that or likes doing that. And truthfully, if you mess up the hire, that's what you got to do. So I could see a lot of just like emotional like fear around that, and then like if they're not 100% sure on the person, just dragging their feet on it.
Right. But it's better off if they're not sure. They don't think, like, let them go. Let's not string anybody along if you're not 100% sold on them, because at the end of the day, more conversations may do it justice, or just might be wasting everybody's time, right? Because I'm sure, it's depending on how big the company size is. I'm sure there's not many more conversations that this candidate could potentially have, other than the CEO, the CTO, the head of sales, and like, time's valuable in a startup. You got to like put your time where it needs to be to grow the business.
Yeah, totally. Cool, Max. So I guess last question for you. If you could just give, actually, now that I'm reading these questions, I think a lot of them are redundant. But last question: what advice would you give to marketing leaders who are trying to hire top tier talent in today's environment?
All right, I'm going to ask a follow-up question to that. What is that marketing leader trying to accomplish?
They have a goal to double their ARR in 12 months. Okay. They just raised a bunch of funding.
How much to how much?
Let's
25 to 50, 5 to 10.
Let's say, I'm trying to think of let's say 5 to 10.
Okay. So, and the reason why I asked you that is because those are the questions that we're asking our hiring managers, because marketers are storytellers, right? Sales and marketers, you have to be, sales is the same thing. You need to tell your story about how you get into accounts, how you close the accounts, what's your sales methodology. Marketing, it's the same thing. Talk to me about the data that, if you've taken a company from 5 million to 10 million, how'd you do it? And how you did it is how you get the job or not get the job. So my recommendation for marketing leaders that are looking to hire a marketer that's, as they're looking to double ARR from 5 to 10, is talk to candidates that have worked at a similar company and doubled their revenue from X to Y, 7 to 14. I mean, you're not going to get like the perfect, storm. It's 5 to 10, but the ones that can explain how they did it are the ones that are going to be a great fit for your organization. The second they start saying the team did this or that group did this versus I did this, I was part of the team, you got to get the difference, right? Kind of shows you the difference between somebody that's a doer that can roll up their hands and, roll up their sleeves and get the program up and running, to I was a piece in this puzzle.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with what you're saying. I think also, I do think there's value in maybe if you weren't like leading the charge on the growth, to your point, just being a part of an organization that did what the new organization is trying to accomplish, I think is super valuable. Because like, even if I wasn't the leader of the marketing team that went 5 to 10, I still was a part of it, and I got to see a lot, and I got to see like what was happening. How was the sales and marketing team coordinating? How are we shifting? How are we measuring things? How often we're meeting? And like, believe it or not, a lot of times you go back to the smaller company and they have no idea. And you could just be like, hey, at the other company, we did this and this, and it was really helpful for that. And like, it's actually there's a lot of value there. So yeah, I truly like that. Like really trying to pinpoint people who have seen it or done it already.
And then it just depends, right? Like, do you want, this CMO that you're talking about, are they looking for the piece of the puzzle? Is it their first marketing hire where they need that more senior person that's been there and done that? Or are they okay with maybe hiring a more junior person that's seen it from the bottom up? So it's all very situational based on what the client's looking for, what their budget is, what their team looks like. But that's the beauty of us, partnering with us as a B2B SaaS company. Like, we're able to really come in and help diagnose what this person looks like, and then find very lookalike people that can come in and do the job and exceed expectations.
Yeah, I would say also just to counter the point that we're making, there also is the scenario where people are a part of a company that's just an absolute unicorn, and like the product is just amazing and sells itself. And then, they have this amazing thing on their resume. Like, I started with this company at 5 million and went to 50 in like 3 years. Yeah. But like they actually that good, but just for like a part of a great ride. So, me and Brian sometimes
open AI, right? Like what?
or any of those like amazing unicorn companies. Brian and I sometimes joke that like we'd rather see we like marketers who like made it work at a not so great company rather than like somebody who was at the big name but maybe wasn't, because if you can make it work at like a mediocre company, then you really had to like figure it out, and you must be good. So we always joke about that. So why don't we chat a little bit about nearshore hiring to wrap it up. So we're obviously working with you, doing nearshore hiring. It's been very successful so far. I'm curious just to hear from you a little bit on kind of like, are a lot of companies going towards this? Why are they going towards this? Like, why do you think maybe it's a good idea or a bad idea? Maybe for some companies it isn't, some it is. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on just like how you think
so. And I've been testing this out, right? So this has been something that we have about 10 nearshore contractors working for American companies in a variety of different, types of roles. Like demand gen's one, obviously. We have 3 working for SRG right now. But I think the thing is, it has to do with the size of business. So I just got off the phone this morning with a small business in Jupiter and in Florida where I live. And, they don't have a budget to hire they need a marketing director, right? They need a marketing director, somebody. And in Florida, anybody worth their weight, it's $100K plus at least in salary. It's $100K, before your benefits and your PTO and all that stuff. So really, finding platform experts at a third of the cost or 40% of that 10K a month, it's valuable, right? So really what we're seeing and how we've been testing the market's really around price, where you can find somebody that can run HubSpot, that can help with Salesforce, that can create content, that can do a lot of these things. Oh, and by the way, also work in the same time zone as you, because as when you think about like when you came to us initially, you were recruiting, in Eastern Europe, which is still 6 hours ahead. But the value of, the cost savings and the value of having somebody that lives in the similar time zone as you is really the 2 legs that we're standing on. We're still testing. We're really testing it with a lot of different agencies. And I know we're talking demand gen here. We're testing a lot around the marketing operations side as well. So like just pure HubSpot practitioners, pure Marketo, more like button clickers, where still that role in the US is 100K plus, 120K plus. You could find people that live in Colombia that have 3, 4, 5 years experience in Marketo or HubSpot at 60 grand, 65 grand, whatever the dollar amount is. So we're able to find a lot, very similar profiles at a deep discount.
Are you, Max, talking, or when you're looking for those candidates, are those candidates mostly sourced for agencies like ourselves, or
for the most? Yes, it's been mainly for agencies because they're seeing the value. Like they're, with agencies, it's all about like, I'm charging X and my employees cost me Y, and you want to make sure you have great employees that don't cost more than X. So, and then I know you guys don't typically bill like most agencies do, but a lot of the agencies in the MarTech, landscape, their bill rate's $175. If you want to do staff aug, it's maybe $150, maybe it's a little bit higher. So for them, if they can get, a great individual at $40 an hour that they can bill out $175, it's a no-brainer for them, right? Or $50 an hour, whatever the hour rate. So we've been toying a lot with the agencies because it's a revenue driver for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm actually curious to see, I don't even know if this is a question. I'm just curious to see if that trend continues or expands to kind of the in-house software company roles. Because I know personally we get a lot of questions, positive questions and inquiries from the companies that we work with that now know the people on our team who are in those South and Central American companies. And I think it opens their mind a little bit that there is other talent and that everyone's remote. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter. Exactly.
And they're in the same time zone or one time zone over. So I know I've gotten some questions from clients and just from friends or colleagues or ex-colleagues. And
where's the introduction, Ryan? Come on, man.
You know what it is, Max? I think it's like very foreign for them to
totally.
So they're not even thinking about hiring yet. They're just like, I get a lot of questions. Again, positive questions. How's it working? How'd you find them? How'd you find the talent? How do you interview? Like very tactical, because their whole mind is still not even.
And that's what really, like, Sixth Sense. You guys know we're a partner with Sixth Sense. We do a lot of business with Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense refers us a lot of their customers that are looking for account-based marketing talent. Even Sixth Sense has an office in Costa Rica, and they're hiring, a lot of the support roles in marketing operations and demand gen and field. Like, we're actually even toying with this concept with Sixth Sense where we're going to like hire former demand gen marketing operations type candidates that have experience with HubSpot or ABM to like almost be like an ABM operations coordinator, because the hardest part with ABM is like the account research and kind of a lot of the mundane account research, account-based marketing operations stuff. Having a team down there that can be leveraged by different Sixth Sense customers. And then, be able to, instead of the BDR team or the demand gen team spending 30% of their day researching, they're spending 100% of their day just going and doing things to drive results.
Obviously, the agencies are attracted to this because of the margins, and a lot of these venture-backed companies have a lot of money and they can afford to hire US people. But I would actually say that the challenges of the nearshore hiring is that if you want these employees to also be on client calls, communicating in any capacity, then you got to make sure they have good English. And I would actually think for just an in-house marketing team, like it's really not that necessary. And I would think they'd actually fit really well into it. The other thing is, right, obviously everyone's so tight now on budgets. Like it's not a couple of years ago where like everyone was just had a ton of funding and was spending a lot. And I think every company we talk to now is like, well, not every, but most of them are really spend conscious now.
Yeah.
So this is a great way to kind of get the resources you need to like hit those goals. Because the other ironic thing is a lot of people's budgets have gotten cut, but the goals have stayed the same.
Right.
So I could see this as a great way to like get the resources you need at a cost effective way and the right people to actually help you hit the goal.
Right. And that's I mean, we're still like, we haven't had a lot of opportunities with internal B2B SaaS, but the agencies are eating it up because, obviously in 2023, they got, the agencies that are tied to tech, they got slashed, right? So then they had to lay people off. And then now, like you're seeing, things are happening. People are hiring. Companies are looking to grow. And the only way to do that is by more marketing, more sales. So, these agencies, instead of, if they have 150 people, they had to let go 40. Well, instead of hiring 40 back, you hire 20 back and the other 20 overseas, or 10. And you're able to mess with your margins a lot and really improve them to help continue the growth of the business.
Yeah, it makes sense. Cool. Well, I think that's all we had, Max. But thank you for hopping on. This was super interesting. Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Demand Stacking Podcast. And with the simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. But if you want more, go to our website, srgmarketing.co, or follow us on LinkedIn by searching SRG Marketing. Remember, to grow your sales pipeline, you need a strategy, and that requires a plan.